And good evening, everyone. It is starting to get toward night. A lot of people have been jumping on my Zooms, and I do not want that. This is simply a recording, and it's an easy way to get this done. So, um, anyway, we will start into chapter 5, which is integumentary system. And I've added a couple of slides that should be of interest to you and should help into our discussion as well. So let's get started on this. I will share the screen. Just sharing. Good. So we should be looking at the integumentary system topic slide or the title slide. So they show, first of all, piercings and tattoos, makeup, all that good stuff. Of course, the integumentary system is skin, nails, hair. Do you think there's any money in that industry? It's I forget the exact quantities, but several $100 billion industry per year, of course, as you know. Anyway, we will look at this, but tattoos have to be done to the dermal level. So go ahead and know that it has to go under the epidermis to stick around, so to speak. All right, so what is the skin or the what are the different parts of the skin, or we call the epidermis and the dermis? There's two main layers. So the epidermis is very surface, it doesn't go very deep at all. And then it's the dermis, and then the hypodermis. Now, technically, the hypodermis isn't part of the skin, so to speak, but we will include it in there. There's primarily fat and blood vessels in that, and connective tissue in that area. So we are not going to be concerned with the various parts of this yet. Okay, we will be concerned though with two types of sweat glands and the various types of receptors that you'll find here. Please note too that this kind of wavy thing that you saw that's known as papilla, dermal papilla. And that is part of the dermal layer, but very thin again. And then this large amount here is known as a reticular layer. So we'll get into that in a second too. Yeah, we'll talk about sebaceous glands and what a hair follicle is. So what is thick skin versus thin skin? We have thick skin in our palms of our hands and the bottoms of our feet, and that's it. It is different than the others in that it has an additional layer. It's called the strata lucidium, and it's basically you can see through it. So, but there you won't find any hair, or certain other glands too. But yeah, it's sebaceous glands. So the palm, but we will have sweat glands on both of those. So kind of note that. Anyway, that's thick versus thin skin. And epidermis, of course, is we'll get into the various layers. They're known as strata. So I have a mnemonic for it that I kind of like. There's another one out there, but I think it's kind of stupid compared to the one that I like, and it's for my person. Okay, so here's my mnemonic for the various layers. And this is starting from the surface on down. But Californians love girls in string bikinis. Yes, we do. And these guys. That's true. But what is it? Strata corneum. So the very first layer is full of literally dead stratified squamous with keratin. So what does the keratin do? Waterproofs it to a large degree. We saw that in another chapter. Then the lucidum, which again is only in the what? Thick skin. It's only in the thick skin. And stratogranulosum, it has a grainy appearance. Stratospinosum has these spiny processes. You can't see it so much here. And there is a lot of keratinocytes here. Now, cells in these layers are living. Okay, so it's only in these top layers that they're actually dead. So you can scuff those off and not even feel them. And they don't get any blood flow that high up. And then stratum basale, which is the basal layer. It tends to have a cuboidal appearance in most pictures. It doesn't here so much here. Now you're seeing a couple other little cells in here, like this Merkel disc. This looks like a melanocyte here. So the melanocyte is going to give us color. Merkel disc is a type of sensory, so it's touch, light touch, but again, it's very high up. All right, so again, those are the stratum that you will have to know and in order. Okay, some of the cells of the epidermis. This slide, don't really worry about it. It is showing some of the layers from various some kind of scoping device. We'll see what they are. Okay, layers of the dermis. Again, the two main layers of the dermis, again, now below the epidermis, is the papillary layer, which is actually where you see your fingerprints with these ridges, but that's very thin relative to the reticular layer, which is much, much thicker. And that's sort of what we call our business layer. Things happen in that layer quite a bit in our skin. But those are the two layers of the dermis. Okay. Why do different people have different skin colors? Well, technically, it's actually from evolution that the closer to the equator, you needed darker skin to not die of skin cancer. And higher up toward the poles, you needed lighter skin to get enough vitamin D to live. So basically, the people with either darker or lighter skin got weeded out of the gene pool, so to speak, by living in those areas. So that's kind of how it works here. Now, what gives our skin its different colors? It is melanocytes, but it's not the number of melanocytes. It's both the type and the number of spines that it has. So it's the relative coloration of the skin, amount of money, based on the number of spines produced, not the number of melanocytes. Okay, so in the stratum basale, like they said, they're taken up by the stratum basale and taken up by the keratinocytes. So in other words, this one had a certain number of spines, and so did this one. Okay, so, and then there's various parts here that you can see these melanosomes. And again, they're showing it being taken up in the darker skin and not in the lighter skin. There's two kinds of melanocytes as well. The eumelanin, brown to black kind of colored skin, and the pheomelanin, red to yellow skin. So you hear about different people, but in different locations in our body, you'll have a higher concentration of one or the other as well. So they're showing freckles is also a protective mechanism in people with low melanin. So it's linked with red hair. I know this personally because I was a redhead freckle-faced kid, but it kind of grew out of that one. So, all right, moles, don't worry about this from a standpoint, but they can be, like I said, everything from just accumulations of melanocytes to actually melanomas. I've actually had a couple of the melanomas, so in situ though. Okay, vitiligo, vitiligo, I think it's called. Michael Jackson apparently had this. It's relatively common. It's more common than you think. Let's put it this way. But yeah, it's unpatches of unpigmented skin. I'm not going to test you on it. I just wanted to show you it's this. And okay, so we will only do a few things on the hair. One of them being, first of all, what holds the hair is a hair follicle. Now, very often that can get clogged or blocked, and normally it's going to need to secrete various things through the follicle on out. If that gets blocked up, ingrown hair or just due to acne, then you get your issues. And we'll get into that in a little bit later. But the sebaceous gland, you see here, secretes oils, some certain waters, but sebum is part of that. So sebum is secreted by a sebaceous gland, which both does a couple things. First of all, moisturizes our skin, but second of all, it helps fight some bacteria that can live. So it's actually a good thing to have your sebaceous glands working. You just don't want them working too much or you don't want the pore clogged. Okay, so that's it. There is a shaft of the hair, and anything above the skin, is it living or dead? Yep, we have zombie hair. So it's actually dead. So we don't have it. Even though it seems like it's growing from this portion, not that portion. So it's actually dead. So if you cut your hair, it doesn't hurt because it's dead. What else do you want to say? Oh, yeah. So again, the follicle holds it, but it's holding it in the bulb region. And it's the hair matrix that's actually the central part that's actually living. So go ahead and note, follicle holds it, but it's holding it in the bulb area, and it's the hair matrix that's more the center of it. There's a cuticle and a couple other things. I'm not so concerned, cuticle versus cortex versus medulla and all that. Okay, sweat glands, two kinds of sweat glands, eccrine and apocrine. Eccrine is so-called normal kind. We have the vast majority of all of our sweat glands are eccrine, and that's throughout the whole body, and it secretes mostly a salty water, you could say, but there's a couple other things in there, but it's both ions and water. And of course, the kind that you'll see in Gatorades is the kind of ions that are mostly in there: sodium, potassium, chloride. But there's some magnesium, there's probably some calcium in there, phosphorus, but mostly it's those three that I just said. Apocrine glands are in your axillary and inguinal areas. Okay, so they're under your armpits and towards your groin area, and they secrete a different type, which has some fats in it, which the bacteria can feed off of and then produce a certain odor. So that's why we need antiperspirant. But those are the only areas with apocrine glands here. Yep. And these are different. So eccrine gland would secrete straight up onto the skin, while again, it's not pictured, but an apocrine gland would actually be connected to a hair follicle and use that as the channel to transmit its stuff. Okay. Now, this is the tough slide for a lot of people, and say in this portion of the course, we have, what is it, 6 different receptors with 6 different things they detect. Okay, and this is something I kind of getting into here. So the Meissner's corpuscle, tactile touch, which tactile is touch, and then low frequency vibrations. That's the Meissner. The Merkel disc is light touch and texture. So, okay, so those two are going to be similar, and they even start with the same letter. So try to really tease out that difference. Pacinian corpuscle is deep pressure and high frequency vibrations. But I think Pacinian pressure is how it is. So it's going to be much further down in the skin because, again, it's deep pressure, and high frequency vibrations have more energy than lower. So let's just say it could penetrate deeper into the skin. So that's where the thing. The Ruffini ending is skin stretch and deformation. So if you stretch your skin somehow, you're feeling it through the Ruffini. Free nerve endings are pain, touch, and temperature. So they can actually have 3 kinds of receptors in there. Noci is for pain, thermo is for temperature, and mechano is for touch. And then a nociceptor is straight up pain. There are 2 kinds of pain that we feel: sharp, which is usually highly localized and very quick. It's what they call a phasic adapter. We'll learn about this in special things, but it has a very high discharge, but then it finishes in a hurry. Versus a dull tonic pain, which is slower, and they're actually on different fibers. So the fast pain is on a delta type fiber, which is myelinated. So it's much faster in its conduction. And the dull, slow, kind of achy pain is C fibers. So lasts a lot longer, but they're unmyelinated fibers. So go ahead and know the difference between our 2 types of pain. Okay, thermoregulation, pretty simple. I'm not going to really go into much, but we vasoconstrict when we want to keep temperature in. This is again on the skin. We vasodilate when we want to get rid of heat. Okay, so it's like we're a big engine that needs to get rid of heat by doing it through our radiator, you could say, which happens to be our skin. So you see dogs panting. They're trying to get more surface area to get the heat out. Okay, so we lose heat through our skin, so we will try to throw more blood toward the skin when we're hot, less blood when we're cold. I think we all know that already. Okay. Aging. Yep, we're getting toward back here pretty fast. Go ahead and know these three things that accompany aging. And boy, do I know these ones. It loses elasticity, becomes thinner, and less flexible and less durable. So it can get cut or broken a little bit easier. There's an interesting test you can do where you pinch the skin on your hand and then see how fast it comes back. Mine, it depends. If I do like this, yeah, I can already grab it right here and it's back. But yours, guys, skin should snap back, okay, right away. Mine kind of eases its way back. So the older you get and the more it doesn't snap back as fast. So that's one way you can test your elasticity in your skin. All right, let's keep going. Fun little test. Okay, with cancers in skin, there's three kinds of cancers, and the most common is the least dangerous, and the least common is the most dangerous. So go ahead and know these in order as well. Basal cell carcinoma, again, most common, least dangerous. Okay, they tend to be in situ, they tend not to spread. Okay, it could take several different forms, yeah, similar to other skin cancers. Squamous cell carcinoma, medium frequency, medium danger. So this is picture number 2. And then the malignant melanoma, and like I said, I've had a couple, but again, I caught them super early. I think one was right. Yeah, one was on my chin somewhere, and one on my back. They did a terrible job on the back one too, but they're less common, but they're the most dangerous. So they can become malignant. So melanomas aren't always malignant. We'll put that way, but they can definitely become malignant relative to. And then of course they're metastasizing, then that gets real dangerous. Okay, and eczema. I wanted to talk about this just a bit because it's again more common than you think. In class our size, probably 1 or 2 people even have it. Okay, but it's actually caused. First of all, it's called ectopic dermatitis, is its official term, and it's a skin disorder. Presents as red flaky rash, but I was going to say, yeah, breakouts can happen with stress. So believe it or not, it's one of these psychoneuroimmunological things. And it's due to either the immune system being too strong, aka not being held back. Okay, so it can be an autoimmune disease. Okay, so genetics, the immune system, environmental factors can all activate it in those people. So, but anyway, that's eczema and acne. And I went ahead and did a little bit of research on this. 5 common types of acne. One was actually part of another kind, and we'll get into it. So I don't even exactly know how to pronounce this word, but comedonal. Okay, they're the blackheads and whiteheads. So it's a clogged hair follicle of some sort. Inflammatory, there was 3 to 4 types, and it kind of got as it got deeper or worse. Okay, so kind of you could see here a sebaceous gland, and now they're saying mild inflammation. Here's more marked inflammation. Well, it's a bigger clog here now. So basically, you can have everything from smaller, so papules, which probably would be more, you're not even seeing it yet, barely any there, to pustules, to nodules, to cysts. And again, the cyst was this type E that I'm showing the phone. Hormonal, my daughter's always talking about this. And yes, it's caused by menstruation, pregnancy, even puberty. So mostly on the jawline and lower chin areas. So if you get it through here, especially during your periods, then that's definitely hormonal based acne. Fungal is a yeast infection in a follicle. So that can happen because of various reasons. And then finally, cystal. And let me see, where else are we at? All right, so we'll keep going. So burns, we're coming right to the end here. We have 1st degree, 2nd degree, and 3rd degree burns. It's basically at what level of depth in the skin is it occurring. There's actually a fourth degree. I just learned just recently too. First degree can happen from what? Sunburns. Sunburns can actually cause a first degree burn. Second degree can be due to a couple things. A strong sunburn can actually be it. It's the kind where you get blistering after. Okay. Chemicals can cause that. And of course, heat. So heat, a burn, a true burn. It's not a severe burn, but it is the kind like you would get from touching an oven or something like that, or a frying pan or whatever it was. So the third degree, though, is usually caused by a true fire. So the skin is actually exposed to fire. Well, first of all, first degree is only to the dermis, epidermis. And it doesn't even go through the epidermis. The second degree does go through the epidermis, but only to the dermal layer. The third degree goes through the dermal layer. So it's actually all the way through the skin. So it's actually hitting potentially muscle, bone, who knows what it might be, but it's actually gone through, to the hypodermis level, I should say, is what hospitalizations usually required. Skin grafts are usually required, and death can occur at that level. So definitely, this is the kind, like I said, where you get burnt in a fire and you need to see it. So you see this person here, severe third degree burns, chemicals and fires. Again, chemicals can do this as well. So, yeah, and again, there's a fourth degree that I wasn't too sure about, so I'm not concerned with this. But anyway, I may test you on burns as well. I won't test you on the calculating the size of these burns, so that's something I'm not concerned with. Okay, this is one I added in because my daughter is super into this because she's probably 3B. She could be 2C. I would call her more of a 3B or 3A type. Anyway, I'm probably 1C or maybe a 2A. But anyway, this was a hair typing thing done by this Andre Walker, who was apparently the hairdresser of Oprah Winfrey. So if Oprah has said it or done anything, it's probably the person's now famous here. But there was 4 types with 3 subtypes in there, and they called it straight, wavy, curly, coily. And that classic Asian hair they even called pin straight. And so I guess you guys are familiar with this. Also, they had 2 other things to help describe it: porosity and density. And my daughter's always saying how she has low porosity. Yeah, because her hair stays wet long time. Mine dries pretty fast, so I guess I would have higher porosity and hair density. And mine is getting less dense toward the front, but luckily I'd had decent density, especially in my younger years, toward the back part. So that part's fine. But of course, in men, it goes because of hormonal reasons. In fact, dihydrotestosterone causes more baldness. And of course, it's on the X gene. So if men have it, we'll get bald quicker than a woman because it's a recessive trait as well. So, and individual variations, again, hair can actually change based on certain areas. In fact, with the hair color, my beard would now come in quite white, and so my chest hair is coming light, but luckily my head hair comes in much darker, and it varies across the different body parts too. But anyway, it does in texture as well. And that would be it, I think. Yep. So we'll end this, stop sharing, and end this lecture.